Good. All right, so everyone. Ooh, that works. All right, so big round of applause. 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea.
A few years later, a very crappy English translation comes out that omits a third of the text and omits such key details as that Nemo is an Indian who wears a turban. That left out, and we had to wait until 1989 for the definitive translation. So that's the one if you want to check this book out. In 1952, Walt Disney, who has been obsessed with Jules Verne for a long time, creates 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, which is an awesome movie. In fact, it's so awesome that they re-release it in 1963 and 1971. Just for kicks, I really enjoy the West German poster because it looks like Nemo is on Kirk Douglas's shoulders. And also for the comparison with the East German poster. That's life on that side of the wall. Okay, so 1971. The 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea ride opens in Fantasyland in Florida. We're in Florida now. And this ride was actually a really close reskinning of an attraction from California called the Submarine Voyage, which in fact, this opened earlier in 1959, and Disney had wanted this to be 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, but one of the sponsors of the park happened to be a submarine company. And they wanted real submarines in there, so that's why that just had to wait. All right, so I rode the ride once and only once when I was 3 years old. All I remember is a porthole, bubbles, and oh my God, there's a giant squid attacking that side. But I can tell you now a lot more about how it worked. I know a lot more. There were these submarines that went around on tracks, and they went into a cavern portion, and there was an outside portion. And there were dioramas on the outside with animatronic scenes from the story of 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, and it worked in it. This gives you a good overview of how that works. This is probably from the skyline where there was a gondola ride that went over it. And it never, of course, nothing ever actually submerged. You can see there were these bubble generators on either side that would shoot bubbles over the portholes. But this created a convincing enough effect to cause at least one panic attack per load of passengers. Despite the fact that you just had to go like that and you could see the water. But the presentation was fantastic. They really outdid themselves here. Both of the, and it needed to be because you were going to be standing in line for well over an hour to get on this ride. I love that this is from the Disney postcard. I love that they could catch and crop out the rest of the park. And, it's just, that's gorgeous. And, and to complete the image, the pilot would actually be up in the sail there. See someone driving from the top. Okay, so Steve is sort of a legend. This guy rode the ride every year for every year of its existence. And thanks to his help, we are now going to take a ride on the 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea ride, truncated down to 2 minutes.
I think we
was actually in the book, even though it wasn't in the movie. This was not in the book. Those were definitely not in the book. This is just a wall. It goes right there. And this is a recent find that I get a kick out of from when, this is when 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea was the Sunday night movie, the Disney Sunday night movie, and Michael Eisner shot a little intro and that's some footage of the actual ride. And one of the crew members we know was one of the guys standing on it, who remembers the stage there.
Hello, I'm Michael Eisner, and welcome to the Disney Sunday movie. It's an incredible thing that Jules Verne, over 100 years ago, thought about a nuclear-powered submarine. Please enjoy tonight's movie, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea.
Yeah, he thought about it. All right, so, amazing 20K facts. There were 12 submarines, which were not in operation at all times. There's actually a dry dock back here where they can park and repair them. So that's the whole caverns area. There's the external portion of the ride. It's interesting you think about, there were 2 of everything because the dioramas had to be on both sides. So 2 giant squids, 2 everything here on both sides of the track. We have 11.5 million gallons of water. They were not allowed to fill it from the municipal water system. That was a problem when they tried. And this real estate is actually 25% of Fantasyland. It's the largest property there. And it's only 1/3 of the planned size. So I just have to imagine at some point one of the engineers was like, you guys are crazy. We can't do that. All right, so if you visit my website, you can actually learn how to drive one of these things. Thanks to one of the crew, yes, thanks to one of the crew members who drew this up for me. He's in there, no, yes. And so this is what the sail looked like. The pilot would stand up there. They couldn't really sit, but they had a kind of a butt rest back there. And when they would go in the dark, they were a perfect target for little kids to tie their shoelaces to the pole right by their feet, which I guess happened a lot. And this is inside the cabins. There were actually catwalks above for evacuating the passengers and the amount of. But there are just so many stories of the craziness that went on with these catwalks. I can't talk about that. All right, so every couple of years they would close down the ride for rehab, which produced this really colorful. This is, I think, just after a paint job, so you can see how colorful it's supposed to be. But the sun and the chlorine would just beat this out of it in a few years. And there was actually apparently someone whose job it was to watch that no one was spelling their name or bad words in the seaweed. And they had a full dive locker and scuba gear for going down and fixing stuff. I consider these men the bravest men in the world. And this is the checklist for all the different motors on these various animatronics, although I think over the years as things broke down, they would just be like, turtle, is it attached? Yes. Go on. This is a clip from Submarine Voyage, but I think it's just so creepy and awesome. Although it's like, why did you need scuba gear to jump in and then... let's grab them. All right, so these submarines are probably they are amazing. These things, they built them, they were 40 tons, they were 40 feet long, they were beasts, that's what I'm trying to say. They hold 38 passengers, and then of course the pilot up in the sail. And they were actually seaworthy. They used a diesel motor, they had the full propeller, you could put them in the ocean. Your only problem would be that you can't steer, but and they had an 8-track audio system. They later switched to CDs. And so here's some plans this is cool because you can see the guides underneath actually have these bumpers that extended out, so the subs couldn't collide with each other directly. The bumpers under the track would hit, but at the end they were so powerful and they were just driven by the propellers. You couldn't there were no brakes per se, so they would collide into each other. And like the worst case scenario would sometimes be that it would jump track, and then they'd have to shut everything down and get some cranes in, and it was a real mess. All right, so this is Bob Gerbs, a really nice guy. He was one of the original designers of the submarines. This is a prototype control system. He's not sending this photo. And here's Bob at the christening, when the subs were coming out of the factory, and they actually drove them through the streets of Orlando. In a sight. And in the diagram, the attention to detail is pretty amazing too. I just want you to make a mental note of how gold this gold leaf is for something coming later. They actually printed these fiberglass coins that would go in the treasure room of Atlantis, and that's like the level of detail. This coin was retrieved by my friend Bert, who worked on the ride. He and a friend went swimming while the ride was in operation once, and scared the crap out of some little kids. According to them, they then hung their underwear in the rafters of the catwalk, so it stayed there until the very end. Later on, when they got cheap, and they just started doing Mardi Gras coins and spice stuff up. Okay, so this is Bert, who has been instrumental in supplying the materials for the 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea website. He was actually such a 20K nerd that he posed for the training manual revisions. So this hand signal for break time. And Bert earned himself the nickname Bass by commenting that the mouths were broken on the bass one too many times. So if you worked on this ride, you were definitely working on the coolest ride. You're working with these beast machines that are definitely real, definitely dangerous, and it was definitely a guys club. It was the only attraction that had no female employees. Well, there was one, for like 1 year in the early 80s, there was a woman who worked on it for almost like 15 minutes before she was like, get me out of here. But there was some prestige to working on this ride, and particularly if you started early, you would have the pewter hat badges, which are now tremendously rare, and then because so many of them were disappearing, that they started using cloth hat badges. But at the end of the day, these were still kids. These were still kids. And within, of course, always with safety first in mind, they had a good time. And one of the favorite pranks that I've heard them say that they used to do is the guy who's driving, the sub would be coming in, and he'd say, hey everyone, thanks for, hope you enjoyed your ride. And he said, Bob is going to be your unloader at the back, and I want everyone to congratulate him. His girlfriend is pregnant. It's too bad he doesn't want to marry her, but he's going to be a dad anyway, so congratulate him, And then the person unloading really has no idea why everybody's coming out giving you dirty looks. This I thought was fun. One of them printed these joke business cards for the crew members. I want to call your attention to specializing in 914 pursuit. 914 was the radio code for a hot girl. And they had a radio code for a girl too young to be a contract salesman. So you might hear something like, we're at a 914 on the rear spur. Oh, never mind, 913. In a brutal competition with the Jungle Cruise. Those guys hated each other. Because that was the other big ride. And this was a certificate from a contest. They had to see who could move the most people through the day. It was random cheating, but 20K is cheap better. All right, so now we move forward to 1994. And what's wrong with this picture? The water is far too still. The ride was supposedly closed temporarily for maintenance, is what they said. But then a few years later, the subs just kind of disappeared one day. And then King Triton showed up in the lagoon, and I don't know what to make of that. And where the waiting area became an area where you could wait in line to have your picture taken with Ariel. And this went on for many years. And then in 2004, King Triton disappeared, and this ominous green wall went up around the entire area. It was drained, which produces this amazing moonscape. These photos were taken, all these photos you're about to see were taken by a Disney employee who sent them to me at great personal risk. When they drained it, everything was dead. Not that anything is alive. Sarah for the dead sea. So, and this just came to me in the mail one day and blew my mind. This guy walked the track of the drain ride. And so the question remained all these years, and I had made this site for several years, and no one knew what was in there. Like, had everything that's been kept? Was it just rotting under the water? And the answer, everything was in fact rotting under there. Oh, but it's so off. This is like the greatest urban ruin of all time. All gold. And what's this? Yep. Seen better days. I like it better like that. Then yes, 2 squids. So amazing. Yeah, seen better days. It's so creepy awesome. This stuff. Actually, I know the guy who has this eyeball that's over his couch. If you wondered, the squid won. That Nautilus is crushed. And then the bulldozers came in and just started smashing everything. I mean, a lot of pieces. The head of that dragon got saved. One of the squids is supposedly in a storage locker in Florida. But they just raised everything. Someone sent me a seahorse they pulled off the wall. Very nice. And in 2005, we have Who's Playful Spot? Yay! But this is lovely. If you go in this door, and we've since found out, look on the inside. I sent somebody on one of these kids once. It's on the inside of this door. Look at the molding. There's a little Nautilus. Yeah, but the other mystery that everyone loves to try and figure out is what happened to all the submarines. So for many years, they just sat in the boneyard out behind Epcot Center, which is back there. Got some cool shots. And then the portholes started showing up on eBay. Disney was selling these officially, and then the scrap guys started selling any kind of part you could imagine. And then supposedly most of them were just ground up into powder and ended up in a landfill. This shark showed up on eBay. This one, the starting bid was $8,500. The woman actually emailed me like, "You might be interested." And I'm like, $8,500 for a buck-toothed shark. The seaweed was very cheap. We all have that. Parts of the diver showed up, which I thought was interesting. Disney released this collectible, which I love. They sawed up some of the remaining portholes and put these 2 little teeny pieces of brass in a bubble and $200 for a commemorative pin. A few years ago, they came out with a model of the subs, which was a nice, consolation prize. This is mine before and after being painted by a guy who offered to paint it for me. One of the subs, the top half of it, like a fiberglass top, was cut off, and it was in the MGM Studios waiting line for a while. And to this day, this is out behind Epcot. These photos are from like a few months ago, and I sort of imagine this great hijinks caper where 10 of us go back there, and it's just 10 of us over there like trying to get out with it. This shows up at conventions and stuff now and again. They roll it out. All right, so this is wonderful. One of them's painted red, and 2 of them get shipped down to Disney's Caribbean island, which you have to take a Disney cruise to get down there. And they're docked there for a while, and one's put out in the shallows, but you're not allowed to go near it, and then a hurricane swept this one away at some point. Which is better, that's great, it's out there somewhere. This one, though, they sunk in the snorkel lagoon. They cut the top half of it off and put netting over all the openings. And this guy sent me this great, I love how it's like the Titanic. And he stuck his hand in one of the portholes, and this is a picture out like where the sail would be. So pretty cool. And so I actually have recently found some footage of this, and the thing to pay attention to is I love how in the beginning the guy says the Nautilus is here through the snorkel mask. So we're coming around the front. That's down towards the back. This is the front loading opening. That's the sail where the pilot would have been. I think a good knife could cut right through this. I'm going down there sometime. All right, so moment of silence for the best liquid space journey ever. And the question that comes to mind, and probably many of you want to know, is why? Why would we destroy this part of our heritage? All right, but there are some pretty clear answers. No one knows the official answer. Disney never released a statement. They never even admitted that it was closed. It was just temporarily closed and it was gone. So this is probably the true answer. It was just such an expensive ride to maintain, and it was falling apart after all these years. The 20K theme was getting tired, although this point might be coming around again, like steampunk is on such a rise that I've seen steampunk before they were saying steampunk. And it also was an issue that there was no way to make it accessible to disabled people, but probably it all comes around. No 20K in 2003, I created 20kride.com as the repository of all the great memory of 20K. And the question I get asked most about my website is why did you do this? And I think, I've thought about this myself. And I think what happened is I kind of got hit with a perfect storm of that I rode this ride when I was 3, and I literally did not cross my consciousness in my entire adult life. And then one day, I'm Google image search for pictures of giant squid. That's just what you do. And I come across it, and I hit the most powerful nostalgic landmine of my entire life. I've never felt anything like when I saw that first image, and it was like a repressed memory that all came rushing back, and the nightmares came rushing back. And I think, and this phenomenon I've thought about at times, and I also think if I had gone back when I was 15 and been able to be this is pretty lame, this probably wouldn't have happened. The website probably wouldn't have happened if I'd had a job at the time. But, I also think I've thought about this phenomenon, this window between maybe 3 and 10, where things can take root in a child's imagination so much deeper, and then afterwards it's just not possible. And case in point, have you ever tried to show anyone any of these movies after the age of 10? It doesn't work. They don't get it, And you can watch them again, and maybe you can retaste a little bit of that feeling, get it back, but it's like crack. It's not as good that time around. But I also think a key element in all of this is that there be a part that scares the crap out of you. This is so important. And for me, it was this. Imagine me, 3 years old, floating up in the top of that water in the middle of the night, and you have a reoccurring nightmare I had, my whole childhood. But I'm not alone. There are millions and millions of visitors to this site. I lost track at a certain point, but I get about 500 visitors a day. I get about an email a day. Some weird, some not so weird. Bert actually wrote me sent me this certificate of appreciation and thanks from all the other 20K crew members. We found about 25 of them that have been able to reconnect, and he sent me an actual pewter hat pin, which I'm tremendously proud to have. Bert produced this memorial coin, which you can actually buy. It's a very nice piece. Someone on our forum is building a 20K simulator with an actual porthole that will have bigger for you. Some kids sent fan art. Oh, it's kind of blown out. That's too good. Let me see if I can turn the brightness down. This image is so good. But I don't know. Anyway, it's like a giant squid, and it says, "We are building a new ride." And I thought it was a new ride. And this kid's like, "I'm going to build a life-size replica." And I'm like, "You got it, man." And my favorite was, I get a little girl write to me one day, and she goes, "I would like to ask Jules Verne a few questions. Can you tell me how to get up?" And I was about to break it to her, and then I'm like, "What?" She should be a scientist, and then when she wins the Nobel Prize, she's like, "I want to thank that man." And pretended he goes, but then actually she writes to me and she goes, "I'm sorry, I'm so stupid." She didn't call me out on it, thank God. Alright, but 20K lives on, and then there is a very nice attraction in Tokyo, and there is a walkthrough attraction in Paris that's kind of weak. And we have a couple really short videos for these, and then we'll be out of here. The Paris one isn't really a ride, but it has this one part where you can sit in Nemo's saloon and the giant squid. You're thinking that's weak, you're right. And the Tokyo ride, I went out there a few years ago, and I wonderful. I arrived on a Tuesday at 1 o'clock. There was no ride, no line at all. And so I rode through it 7 times consecutively to get a good video. This was the goal. And it uses no water. There's double-plated glass, and the bubbles are in the glass between the window and your little like noddle pods, which is kind of doesn't have the same feeling at all. But the presentation there is amazing. You can like remote control a little flashlight. Oh, this is a good part. That squid attack is a 7.5. But then there's like little aliens. It just totally jumps the shark. Einstein's head at the bottom of the ocean. And as I was leaving that ride, I saw this wonderful sign, which I will leave you with. Bert, say something. I don't know if we can hear you. What?
Hi.
Yes. And so does anybody have any questions for Bert about, oh, I wish I could, well, let's just try to turn that around so Bert can see.
Don't turn it around. Don't turn it around.
Keep going. Okay, so I have a question for Bert, which is what it feels like to go from having worked on that ride when you were a teenager in the 70s to being here tonight and people actually caring.
I'm sorry. What?
Uh-oh. The question
What was the question?
The question is, what does it feel like to be in this place after all these years of like imagining when you were saying
It feels incredibly strange to be here like this, like an Apple 1984 commercial. So.
Does anyone have any questions for her? Say again? Someone wants to know what went down on the catwalk.
Oh, what went? That was for evacuating the ride. That was for evacuating the ride. Yeah. If one of the boats got in trouble or got stuck. 914. Code is 101 is when the attraction is down, and 102 is when it was up. 10.8 is when you're in service, and 10.100 was an emergency.
Which makes me want to ask you, what's the worst accident you ever saw?
The worst accident I ever saw was when a boat throttle quit working and a 40-ton boat came barreling into the dock area and rear-ended another boat that was docked and loading guests. But that was only after we put 4 ropes on it, and all 4 ropes snapped. And when they snapped, it sounded like 4 cannons going off. See my hat? Yeah. It's you don't want to know.
Did he keep anything from underwater?
Did he or they?
He, personally.
Oh, what? They want to know what you have from the ride, your collection. I know you have some panels in the garage, right?
Right, I have some actual parts for the submarines. I also have one of these resin coins that I actually stripped off my clothes and swam down into the ride while there were guests going around on the ride. And, I picked up the coins, and nobody saw me, I don't think, but they certainly didn't see a sea serpent.
All right, we're gonna take a really quick, like, 5-minute break. I gotta just pee myself. All right.